On the previous day, after coming out of the valley of the shadow of death, Christian had overtaken his old friend, Faithful. But their joy at meeting was not to last for long. They now descended into the town of Vanity. They could hear the sounds of a fair, which is held all the year round. It's called Vanity Fair. Most fairs are merry places, but not this one, not for our travellers, for here, Evangelist had warned them, one of them would meet his death. As in other fairs of less importance, the streets are named after different countries. There's the French Row, and the Italian Row, and the British Row, where the commodities of these countries are sold and promoted. Indeed, there are stalls where every foolish trifle in the world is up for sale. Knickknacks of gold and silver, baubles and bric-a-brac and precious stones. In addition, you could buy titles and honours and preferments to high office and vain pleasures and empty delights of every kind. While moving busily among the crowds are cheats and rogues and mountebanks. The air is full of fearful oaths, and murder, they say, is as common as theft. It is an institution of long standing, artfully set up by the prince of the demons, Beelzebub himself, in a place through which all who are pilgrims and strangers in this world must pass when going to the celestial city. Many, it is feared, get no further on their way. As to Christian and Faithful, hoping they would pass unnoticed, they pulled their collars up around their faces. But the rabble were quick to spot them. First, they jeered at them for their outlandish clothes. Then, they jeered at them for their foreign accents. Finally, they asked them angrily, "Why aren't you buying our merchandise? Buy, buy, buy." "We only buy the truth," they said, and put their fingers in their ears, and sought to turn away their eyes from beholding vanity. At that, the townsmen were the more enraged, and the noisiest of hubbubs ensued. News of the hubbub presently reached the burgomaster. He took the pilgrims to be lunatics, and bade his officers arrest them as disturbers of the peace, and take their weapons from them. They were placed in a cage, with their feet in the stocks, as a public spectacle, and made the objects of any man's sport. For their part, they encouraged one another to trust in the Lord, and behaved themselves most wisely, giving the passers-by good words for bad. But this further enraged the men of the fair, who now demanded, in loud voices, that an example should be made of one of them, and he should stand trial in court. So a day was appointed, and the chosen prisoner was brought before the judge. The judge was Lord Hategood. The prisoner was Faithful, and witnesses were called.
Order in court.
The first, whose name was envy, took the oath. Then, pointing his finger at Faithful, he said, "My lord, I have known this man, Faithful, for a long time," which was a lie for a start. "And notwithstanding his plausible name, he is one of the vilest persons in the country." Superstition was the second witness. "For myself," he said, "I have no great acquaintance with the prisoner, nor do I desire to know him further. For in my talk with him, he did condemn our laudable religion as a thing of naught."
Order!
The third witness was a Mr. Pickthank.
"My lord," he said, "and you gentlemen all, I too have heard this fellow speak things that ought not to be spoke. He spoke contemptuously of our noble Prince Beelzebub, and of his honourable friends, Lord Luxury, Lord Lechery, and Sir Havit Greedy. He also railed at you, my lord, who are appointed his judge. He called you, I regret to say, an ungodly villain."
It was clear by now that Faithful had been singled out by all three witnesses for their attack. So the judge addressed himself to Faithful.
"You have heard, sirrah," he said coldly, "how these honest gentlemen have witnessed against you. You are, beyond doubt, a vile runagate. Yet, in order that all men may see our gentleness towards you, let us hear what you have to say in your defense."
"I say then," said Faithful, "that in my belief, your laws and religion are flat against the word of God. If you can prove me wrong, then I'm ready to recant. As to Mr. Pickthank's allegations, I abide by what I said. Your prince and his attendants, by this gentleman named, are fitter to be in hell than in this town. And so, the Lord have mercy on my soul." The judge, in summing up, quoted many learned instances to prove we know not what. Then he called on the jury, all lawful men and true, to consider their verdict. The foreman, Mr. Blindman, said,
"I clearly see this man to be a heretic."
"Away with such a fellow," said Mr. No-Good. "Aye," said Mr. Malice, "for I hate the very looks of him."
"A sorry scrub,"
said Mr. Highmind.
"Hang him! Hang him!"
said Mr. Heady. "Hanging is too good for him," said Mr. Cruelty. So they found him guilty, according to their laws. And after manifold indignities, they burnt him at the stake. Thus Faithful met his end. "But," says John Bunyan, the writer of this account, "I saw in my dream that behind the crowds there stood a chariot and horses waiting for Faithful, who, as soon as his enemies had done with him, was taken up into it and wafted through the clouds to the sound of trumpets. So, in truth, he fared better than his friend, Christian. He would arrive first at the celestial city, and having been faithful unto death, the king would give him the crown of life. Where, all this time, had Christian been? Well, one of the men of the fair, whose name was Hopeful, was much moved by the calm deportment of the pilgrims. And while the people crowded round to see the execution, he succeeded, as sometimes happens in a dream, in spiriting Christian away to safety. And now, Christian and Hopeful travelled on together.